Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Nishasingla, and in today's session we are going to talk about class-based components in React.js. In our previous videos we have already discussed about what is component and how you can create your basic component in React.js, and today we are going to talk about class-based components in detail. Now you will ask me Nisha, in latest version we really don't need class-based component, as we know that functional components are quite powerful and they can do pretty much everything that a class component can do. So why we are discussing about class-based component? So I agree with your point, but I will explain all those points in detail at the end of this video, like why you still need to know about class-based components. But before that, let's discuss about how you can create class-based components in React.js. So watch the complete video till the end to understand this concept completely so that you can take the best out of it. Now before starting the session, I just want to let you know that you can check out my Instagram account for the detailed notes on React.js. I will provide the description about my Instagram handle in the description. You can check it out. So now let's get started. In our previous session, we have already created this link component, but if you check, this link component was just a simple functional component. So now I will just tell you step by step how you can create a class component, and I will do a very brief comparison how functional components are different from class component. So just for the explanation, let's create one more component and we will create it as a class component. So here I am creating one more component. Let's give it a name of user.js, and here I am going to create my class component. So the first thing, when we talk about a class component, then definitely instead of function we are going to create a class. So if you have already worked with ES6, then you must know the syntax of classes, how you can create class in ES6. And if you don't know, then don't worry. To create a class in ES6, all you need to do, you need to use class keyword and the name of the class. Now at this point of time, this is just a simple ES6 class. To make it a component, every class-based component must extend from one base class, and that is your component class. So here we have to use extends keyword and mention the base class name, and that is component class. We know that in ES6 to implement inheritance we have to use this extends keyword. And now we are extending one class, component class, from this React package. So you have to import this React from React package. And we know to use this component in some another file, we have to export it. So the same rule will go here. You have to mark it with export keyword so that we can import it in any other component file. Now when we talk about a class-based component, you need to remember either it is a functional component or a class-based component. The purpose of component is to return something on UI, to return JSX, right? So if you remember, in a functional component, you just need to use return keyword, and here you can return your JSX. The same rule go with class-based component as well, but the return keyword will be wrapped inside a render function. Inside this render function, you can have a return keyword, and within this return, you will return your JSX. As of now, I'm just putting class component. Later on, we can change this one. So render function is the only mandatory function in a class-based component. You can have lots of other functions. It all depends on the project requirement, but every class component must have render function. Inside this render function, you can write any valid JavaScript code that will execute every time whenever this function is going to re-render. So this is the basic syntax of class-based component. At least this much of code you have to write. You need to create one component with class keyword, and every class component must extend from react.component class, and every class component must have at least one method, and that is a render function, which will help us to return the JSX. Now your basic class component is ready. Super easy, right? Now let's see, is it working or not. So when you check it on your browser, you will see nothing like that. Okay, why? I hope you got the reason, because we have created our class component but we didn't import it anywhere. So let's move to the app.js file. The way we have imported link component, similarly we are going to import user component. So let's do the import here. As of now, let me remove this link component and I will use it only once. Now one point to remember, doesn't matter whether it is a class component or a functional component, the way you are going to call it, it will remain same. Okay, from here it will not make any difference whether it is a functional component or a class component, because calling a component will remain same. You just need to mention its name, that's it. So by looking at here, you cannot say it is a functional component or a class component because it is same the way we are going to call it. The difference comes how you have defined it. So now let's check. Yes, you are getting this one, right? So this message we have written from our class component here. So this is a very simple class component. Now if you remember, we have also talked about like your component can take some properties that we call props to make it little dynamic. So now maybe I want to pass some username from my app component to this user component so that I can display some name dynamically. So the rule will remain same. You just need to mention your property. Maybe I will say user, and here you can mention your username. It could be an object, it could be a string, anything you can pass. As of now, I'm just passing hard-coded value to Nisha. So this user component is taking one user prop which has a value of Nisha. You can hold your object as well. It's totally up to you. So now my user component also taking one property or one prop with the name of user. Now let's talk about how to use props inside a class-based component. If you remember, in a functional component, to use prop, you have a props object, and that props object will return all the property associated on that component. Similarly, we have the props object in users in the class-based component as well, but to access that, we have to use this keyword because we are inside a class, right? So when we talk about class, we talk about this keyword as well. So we have to use this dot props. Let's check this one. As I told you, we can write any JavaScript code inside render. So I can do something like this as well. So let's see whether this object is returning me the props that I have passed to this user component or not. Open your developer tool and check the console tab. Here we have one object, and if you expand it further, you can see here I'm getting one prop with the name of Nisha. So it means to access the prop, you have to use this dot props. So now with the help of object destructuring syntax, you can take out the props which you want to use. As of now, I have only one prop that I have extracted, and now with data binding expression, you can bind your user prop here. So now you can see that we got the prop on the screen. That is pretty much simple, right? Okay, now let's talk about constructor inside the class-based component. If you have worked with classes, then you must know the use of constructor, right? Constructor, basically in a class, a constructor is a method that is automatically called when an object of that class is created, right? It is not mandatory to have constructor in every class-based component. If you have something to initialize inside this class component, then you can use constructor, especially when we have states. So to initialize your state, we basically do that inside the constructor. So this constructor has one parameter that is called props. Now, if I say like, can you access this dot props inside this constructor or not? This is a valid statement. It was working for us. But will that work inside the constructor as well? Let's check this one. No. So when I try to access this dot prop inside my constructor, I'm getting one error like must call super constructor in derived class before accessing this. It means we have to call a base class constructor as well if you want to use any of the thing from the parent class. So to make it work, you have to use something like this. So you can see here now the error is gone, but still I'm getting undefined. So in that case, you need to pass this prop as well to the super constructor. So when you check now, you should get the result. At line 6 also, I'm able to get the props. This one is only required when you want to access this dot props inside the constructor. If you are not using this one, then that is fine. You can leave like this as well. But this is the basic structure, so it's good to have like this. And in future, if your constructor will have some state, so in that case also we have to initialize this state like this. So to access this keyword inside constructor, we have to use super keyword. So this is the structure that you have to remember. So this is how we are going to use constructor inside a class-based component. Other things will remain same. You can have other functions as well. You can have events, but you just need to maintain this in the class-based component. So this is all about, on a very high level, how class-based components work. So now let's talk about why we need to learn class-based component. As we know that with version 16.8.0, React team has introduced a very important concept and very powerful concept, that is hooks. So with the help of hooks, now my functional components are enough capable of handling almost everything that a class component can do. And we have already seen that handling functional component is quite easy. We don't need to do unnecessary stuff, like we don't need to do inheritance here, we don't need to handle constructor, we even don't need to worry about this keyword. It is quite simple. The reason I'm explaining class component to you is that if you are learning React, it is very important to understand the syntax of class-based component as well. I'm not saying that you need to use or you need to write a component in a class-based syntax. No, what I'm saying is, and in the interview still we are asking about class-based component to know how much comfortable you are with React, right? Second point, it's not always mandatory that you are going to start on latest version of React or on a fresh project. If you are joining any team who is working on a very new project, that is fine. They are going to use functional components only. But maybe you have joined a legacy project. The team has created lots of class components in the past. So they are not going to move everything into function component at one go, right? You have to work with that team. And for that, you need to understand how the class components are working. Or maybe you will work with them to migrate the class components to functional components. So at that time also, you will be able to migrate them only when you know what is happening in the class components. So that's why I'm not saying to spend too much time to learn class-based component, but at least you should know what all things are there in the class-based component and how to write a basic class-based component. And in this React series also, most of the things we are going to handle using functional components only. So that is the only reason I still recommend you to learn class-based component. I hope this session is clear. I kept it very simple just to let you know how class-based components work. And in the next video, we are going to talk about hooks in React, which is quite powerful and very interesting topic. So we'll see you in the next video. Till then, take care and bye-bye.